I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor.
Very, very rocky.
Death by government.
Drain the swamp.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Liberty Nation's Swamponomics videocast. I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor. This week, did Scott Bessent save the Trump 2.0 economic agenda? Since President-elect Donald Trump's election victory, Wall Street investors have been on the edge of their New York Stock Exchange seats, waiting for his pick to lead the Treasury Department. While the billionaire financier had been mostly overwhelming favorite, the betting market saw quite a bit of action. Billionaire Howard Lutnick was considered a favorite, but then was chosen for Commerce Secretary. This may have been surprising because Lutnick received the endorsement from Elon Musk and RFK Jr. John Paulson was also a favorite, but he confirmed he would not take any role in the Trump administration because of his hedge fund. Out of nowhere, former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh ascended to the top of the betting markets on reports that Trump would pick Warsh for Treasury and then transition him to helm the Federal Reserve once Jerome Powell's term expired in 2026. Other names also entered the list, including Wall Street billionaire Mark Rowan and Republican Senator Bill Hagerty. In the end, Trump went with the safe so-called business-as-usual candidate that his fellow hedge fund titan supported, and Wall Street was relieved. During the November 25th trading session, the leading benchmark indexes rocketed, with the blue-chip Dow Jones Industrial Average rallying about 500 points. But the most notable action occurred in the U.S. Treasury market. As Liberty Nation News has reported, U.S. government bond yields have been soaring, even as the Federal Reserve embarks upon a new interest rate cutting cycle. The surprises sent in Treasury yields have been mostly driven by fears that the incoming administration will worsen the federal government's deteriorating fiscal health. On the campaign trail, a plethora of economists and think tanks rang alarm bells that Trump's tax-cutting crusade would lower federal revenues and expand the budget deficit, causing Washington to borrow more from capital markets. However, one trading session after Trump's selection of Scott Bessent, yields tanked. The benchmark 10-year yield sank below 4.3%. The 20-year yield tumbled below 4.58%, while the 30-year bond dropped to 4.48%. So, why did this happen exactly? Well, the street has painted Bessent as a deficit hawk. This makes sense as Bessent has advocated for a three-pronged approach to addressing America's economic condition, influenced by the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's Three Arrows economic program. According to Bessent, Trump needs to grow the economy at a 3% clip, add 3 million barrels of oil production per day, and reduce the budget deficit to 3% of GDP. Today, that number is around 7%. But here's the deal. Will Bessent champion deep spending cuts or lower the deficit to GDP ratio by growing the economy? In a September interview with CNBC's Squawk Box, here's what he said.
I think we can look back to what happened in Trump 1.0 and see the success there. But what we have now is a spending problem. Harris and Biden have blown out the deficit. We are at 7% of GDP. We've never had that before when we're not in a recession and not in a war. And what do we have to show for it? I don't know, 8 charging stations? So I think President Trump, I've had extensive conversations with him. We have a plan to talk about the discretionary spending, getting that under control, except for military, keep increasing the military, and go from there.
It is no secret that Uncle Sam is struggling. The federal government registered a $1.8 trillion budget deficit in fiscal year 2024, the third largest on record. The national debt recently unlocked the $36 trillion milestone, roughly 3 months since touching the $35 trillion mark. Interest payments are about $1 trillion per year. Indeed, this would occur if the U.S. economy were contracting or entrenched in a major war or facing a health crisis. Instead, the United States is generating record revenue and the economy is growing. Indeed, America has a spending problem. So does this mean that investors think Bessent can turn the government's finances around? perhaps there is some hope and optimism that the nation's capital can potentially stabilize deficits in the coming years. But there is little evidence suggesting Trump 2.0 can tighten America's belt. In his first term, the deficit increased every year, even before the pandemic. Sure, the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, can help rein in waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government, though the bureaucratic state might prevent this from transpiring. Additionally, the major drivers of spending and budget shortfalls are mandatory spending, think Social Security and Medicare, that drive 2/3 of outlays, but reforms are ostensibly off the table. Remember, Wall Street is fickle. Any degree of uncertainty or drastic changes will drive markets one way or another. Perhaps this was a blip on the bond market radar. Nevertheless, what was once a boring corner of the financial markets, the US bond market has become must-see entertainment, maybe because of that 4% one-month yield. That's it for me this week. Please read my full Swamponomics column on the pages of LibertyNation.com, and be sure to check out my previous Swamponomics TV videos and interviews with the likes of former Congressman Ron Paul, economist Stephen Moore, and prominent business media personality Carol Roth. Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates or campaigns or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. Thank you. I'm Andrew Moran, Liberty Nation's economics editor.
Very, very rocky.
Death by government.
Drain the swamp.